So that's what we're essentially striving to do here, is bring you guys some more awareness in regards to connecting your central nervous system to your muscle system to make sure that you can improve your power output when you get into the gym. Hey everybody, what's going on? This is muscle activation warm-ups part 2. For those of you who saw the previous video on how to utilize muscle activation techniques for your upper body, we're going to be taking you guys through a muscle activation warm-up for your lower body today, taking you guys through how to activate the glutes, the hams, quads, calves, ankles, knees, hips, all of the above. That's extremely important to make sure that you can reach those extreme end ranges of motion on either, whether it be a hip hinge pattern, whether that be a squat pattern, or whatever it is. We want to make sure that you guys are properly warmed up to be able to execute those movement patterns really, really well. So a lot of our clients have been receiving our training programs, and they notice that within the beginning of the training program, within the warm-up, they see this thing, muscle activation, and they're like, what is the muscle activation? So what I want to do is create this video just to bring some more awareness, because I'm sure that, the concept in and of itself is still relatively new, and not a lot of people are aware of the connection between your central nervous system and your muscle system. So that's what we're essentially striving to do here, is bring you guys some more awareness in regards to connecting your central nervous system to your muscle system to make sure that you can improve your power output when you get into the gym. So without further ado, guys, this is your lower body muscle activation warm-up. Normally the first thing I would do is I would take myself or somebody that I was working with through a squat pattern. So if you were to try to squat and you just took a step back, you set your feet up how you would normally squat, okay? You brace, tighten your glutes, tighten your core down, hands go on top of the chest, and you allow them to just lower down into position, okay? And then hang out there at the bottom. Is there anything specifically that feels tight? Basically taking a step back, analyzing your body internally. How does it feel? Do any of my hips feel tight? Do I feel some tightness in my knees? Do I have limited range of motion of my ankle? What feels like it needs to be turned on? What feels like it needs to be activated? Secondly, we can move forward from that, and we can kind of self-analyze and spend time focusing on the muscles that would essentially insert or connect to that specific area. Now, basically, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect the nervous system to the muscle system. So what I'm gonna do now is just take you guys through a sample routine of how I stimulate my muscle system before I train legs, right? So obviously, I think it's super important that we start off at the foundation first, which is obviously the feet. Now, in regards to your training, there's a couple things that most people don't necessarily talk about, and that's gonna be your footwear. So what are you actually wearing when you're training your legs? What I've been seeing a lot of online is people that are training their legs wearing the shoes with like the gigantic air bubbles on the bottom of them. And if you think about it, when you're training your legs or you're training any muscle group, you want to be able to create as much stability as possible. If you're standing on an air bubble, you're not necessarily stable. I'd say you're actually very unstable. So ideally, you want to be able to wear a shoe that is somewhat minimalistic, something with a very small sole on it. Personally, I like to train just in a big pair of socks, or I'll train barefoot, or I'll train with my Vibram shoes with the fingers on them. And those have been, at least for me, those have been the most comfortable shoes that I've been able to wear while I'm training legs, as I believe that, there's no loss of power output, okay? Meaning that if I'm wearing a shoe with a cushion, in order for my weight to create the transfer of energy through the ground, in order for my foot and my body to generate the pressure, it has to go through the bubble, hit the ground, and then the bubble's gonna compress, and then I'll be able to get that spring out. However, that wouldn't necessarily be conducive because, again, you're creating an unstable environment for your ankles. So let's go ahead and get straight into this thing. The first thing we're gonna do is I want you to take your feet and pretend like you're trying to grab the rug with your toes. And you're just grabbing the rug. You're gonna do that for 10 repetitions. Now, if you are not somebody who has ever utilized their feet, because maybe your feet stay scrunched up in shoes all day, this will probably feel super weird to you, and you will likely, you won't have much of a muscle connection to your feet. So I can do this maybe 10 to 15 times, and I can already feel like the arches, my toes, everything within my foot is essentially already turned on, because I've already kind of created the stimulus to the muscle, I essentially do this twice a week. So the muscles are already active, Now, in regards to the second thing, we want to mobilize the ankle joint and the calves, okay? So basically what you're going to do is you're going to flex the tibia, pull it back as hard as you can, drive your feet into the ground, and then try to raise your heels off the floor. Now that's going to shorten the calf muscle, or the gastrocnemius. Then you're going to pull back, raise up, pull back, raise up, pull back, raise up, pull back, raise up, pull back, raise up. Now again, you want to focus on really trying to squeeze the muscle here, okay guys? Really focus on trying to neurologically connect. If you're feeling like you're like, oh, I just don't feel it, spend more time in the contraction, and spend as much time in the contraction as you can until the muscle feels like it's going to cramp. Once the muscle feels like it's going to cramp, you've pretty much solidified a neurological connection to that muscle, okay? So pull back and contract, all right? Now, secondary to that, something that I really like to do, and most people are extremely weak in this movement pattern, but the second thing I like to do is actually activate the hip, okay? So basically what I've learned through the program Muscle Activation Techniques is that muscle activations, okay, so actually neurologically connecting your brain to the muscle and the joints and the origin and the insertion associated with the area helps create more stability. Now, if we can turn on the musculature of the hip, it actually allows more flexibility or more range of motion within the hip. So basically what that looks like is me kind of stabilizing myself here, locking myself to the ground with my hands, stabilizing. And then what I'm doing is I'm pointing my toe, I'm activating my sartorius muscle, and then I'm lifting and controlling down. Now I want to do this for about 10 repetitions or so. Now for most people, and keep in mind guys, I used to personal train a lot of people in real life, most people can't even lift their leg off the ground by doing this. And we oftentimes wonder like, well, Will, like why are my hips so tight? Why are my hips so tight? It's like, it's not necessarily that your hips are tight, it might just be that the muscles aren't active. So then I'll do the same thing to the other side, flexing the quad, bracing myself, lifting, and back down. Now I am breathing a little hard because this is pretty challenging. Now, you can feel free to duplicate that for a couple of sets if you like, but I can already feel that those muscles are turned on, and I know that by doing that, it's going to help increase my range of motion so that when I actually go and I attempt my squat, just like I attempted my squat at the beginning of the video, when I go and I attempt my squat, I'm going to be able to drop in and it's going to feel great. All right, so second thing is going to be, we did ankles, we did calves, we did hips. Let's go ahead and activate the glutes next. So basically you'd want to have yourself lying in this position, okay? Now, whenever you take your femurs, okay, and you abduct them away from your body, okay, you're activating your glute medius. Now, your glute medius is the band of glute musculature that wraps around the upper portion of your glute. So if you've ever seen somebody with a really nice, like what seems to be like a higher butt, essentially they have really well-developed glute medius muscles. And that's normal when we're talking about athletes who do a lot of exercise where their knees are constantly traveling out. So they're constantly activating, whether that be like a volleyball player, a track sprinter, a softball player, something like that. A lot of females who have played sports in some degree have really well-developed upper glutes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna activate, and you can even put a band here, okay? So you wanna activate, and then you wanna drive up to a glute contraction through the heels, okay? So in this position here, I'm squeezing my glutes as hard as I can, and then I'm relaxing. I'm squeezing as hard as I can, relaxing. Squeeze as hard as I can, and relax. Squeeze as hard as I can, relax. Squeeze and relax. Squeeze and relax. Squeeze and relax. And then right after that, since we're already in this position, we can actually neurologically connect to our hamstrings now. So what you guys are gonna notice is that I'm gonna do a hip thrust, okay? So I'm in this position. And then what I'm thinking about doing is I'm taking my heels and I'm trying to pull my heels to my butt. So now I can activate my hamstrings and my glutes, relaxing, drive up, pull, down, drive up, pull, down, drive up, pull, down, drive up, pull, down, drive up, pull, down. For me, because I've already been accustomed to doing this, my glutes and my hamstrings are already turned on. That's really all I need. Roughly about 10 reps with a really good contraction. Now, most of you, probably similar to me, I sit right over there and I sit in a chair for the majority of the day. And when you're doing that, like I said in the upper body video, you're in a constant state of protraction. We actually want to create retraction and more muscle activation of the upper back, especially if you're going to be doing something like a barbell back squat, a high bar squat, even hack squat, front squat, anything like that. So this is how you do that. Flip right on over. Now what you want to do is lock out your quads. Okay, now you can tell my glutes are already turned on. Okay, so I lock my quads out. I have my hands in this position, and then what I'm essentially doing is I'm coming down and I'm activating. We used to call these Supermans in football practice. Activate. Now, if you really want to activate this and you're maybe not feeling this enough, just go ahead and go into a peak contraction and just hold that there. Now, if you want to isolate specific muscles of your upper back, maybe it doesn't feel like everything's turned on, you can just maneuver your hands around and actually squeeze different parts of your rear delts, your upper back, your rhomboids, your traps, and your lats, and your erectors. And then relax. And the very last one we're going to do is for the quads. All right, guys, so this is the last and final one. This one is going to be for your quads, and I promise you this one's probably going to suck pretty bad because most people don't have isometric strength. So what I'm going to do, get into my normal squat position. And what I'm essentially doing is I'm thinking about locking my core down, flexing my glutes, crossing my hands so that I'm in a stable environment. And then what I'm doing is I'm essentially lowering myself down, okay? I'm not trying to drive my butt back or anything like that. I'm just lowering myself down so that my quads can actually take on the weight of my body. Once I get to the bottom of that, I'm just gonna hold that isometric contraction. I'm just gonna hold that. Now what is essentially happening is that my body's already neurologically trying to connect to my quads. I can tell because they're shaking, they're kind of already starting to burn, and I can tell that they're starting to get fatigued already. So what I'm essentially gonna do in this position is think about pushing really, really hard through the earth. However, I don't want my body to come up more than a few inches. So I'm gonna push. Now you can tell as I'm pushing, my legs are actually starting to shake a bit, and I'm gonna drop back into it. I'm gonna push, and I'm gonna drop in. I'm gonna push, I'm gonna drop in, push really hard, drop in, push, and stand up. Now, I would recommend you guys try to do about 5 to 10 reps of that. Now, chances are that's gonna be pretty hard for a lot of you, and that's okay, because chances are your isometric strength is not necessarily up to par. So I would highly recommend you guys spend some time in that to neurologically connect your quads to your mind so that you can increase your power output on your next leg day. All right, guys, that's been your lower body muscle activation warm-up. I just got warmed up doing that exact same thing, so I'm gonna head home right now and train legs. I'll see you guys in the next video. See you.